Hey there! So this PowerPoint, it is part of the civil rights movement that we're going to be reviewing in social studies. This particular section is about Martin Luther King and his life and all the legacy that he left behind. So Martin Luther King was born in 1929 and was assassinated in 1968. So he was born on January the 15th to school teacher Alberta King and Baptist minister Michael Luther King. So, the reason why at the beginning of the semester each January we start our class on a Tuesday is because of the celebration of Martin Luther King. If you have the celebration on a weekend, that actually is going to be moved to Monday, and we're going to have the day off. Um, so we continue. One of the principal formations or the principal the fundamental teaching that he had when he was growing up was, of course, the dad was a minister, so he knew a ton about the scriptures, the Bible, and all this content. Now, he actually from the beginning was a gifted person. He was so intelligent that when he was 15 years old, he was actually enrolled into college. And he graduated in 1948. And the very first degree that he got was a bachelor degree in arts, in sociology. Now, later on, he got married to Coretta Scott in June 18, 1953. From there, he continued studying and he enrolled in Crozer Theological Seminary in Chester, Pennsylvania, and he graduated with a bachelor in divinity degree in 1951. Now, remember this: the fundamentals of his education were always religion and Christianity. So he pursued those ideals not only in the Bible and when he was growing up, when he was a kid at home, but also he took those studies further to receive his education. Now, after he was done with his studies, he became a minister in 1954, and he was a pastor of Dexter Avenue Baptist Church in Montgomery, Alabama. So we are down south of the country. Now he continued. He did not stop there. He continued his studies and he continued his doctorate. And remember, a doctorate is actually the highest level of degree that you, as an academic, um, as a like a academic journey, you can have. So he received a doctorate in philosophy and systematic theology from Boston University in June 5th, 1955. And that is actually the reason why we call him Dr. Martin Luther King, because of his PhD. Now, another kind of separate chapter in this fight, um, it is actually Rosa Parks. So, 6 months later, his graduation in December the 1st, 1955, Rosa Parks started a whole new movement also, and actually a boycott. So he took a stand for her race. There was a rule back then that said that if you were a colored person or a black person, and you should always sit all the way to the back of the bus. If there was a white person that actually needed a seat, you needed to give up the seat so the white person could have it. Now, Rosa Parks was tired of doing this, and he refused to give up her seat. As a consequence, she was arrested, and um, um, free beyond from that, actually, it was kind of one of the elements of the civil rights movement, because from there was a boycott that started that lasted 381 days, where black people would not ride the buses. They were losing so much money. The companies were losing so much money that ultimately the court decided to rule against the segregation in buses. So it happened at the same time that Martin Luther King was studying becoming a leader. So he was somehow selected the president of the Montgomery Improvement Association. Actually, we call that the Montgomery Boycott, where Black American people start riding buses for over a year. In February 1960, there was yet another strategy for the nonviolence protest. Back then, if you would go to a restaurant, only whites were allowed to be there, and only whites were allowed to eat there. Now, in February 1st, 1960, there was another group of people where four African American college students, they walked in to a whites only lunch counter, meaning a restaurant. Um, the local Woolworth store in Greensboro, North Carolina, and asked for a coffee. Now, they were not served the coffee. They were refused the service. But as a response to this, actually, they decided to stay there and wait patiently. Now, they received threats, they received intimidation, but they didn't do anything. They just stayed there, and it was kind of a symbol of like um, a show of protest. Now, this is actually how another strategy called the sit-in was born. So it is another strategy where you just go to a places where you are not supposed to go because you are a black person. You stay there, sit there, and you stay for hours. Okay, now there was this boycott. There was a media day in May 20th, 1956, after the bus boycott in Montgomery. And remember, I was telling you the boycott lasted for 381 days. So at this moment in history, Martin Luther King was actually the head of the civil rights movement that barely had started. Now he got married to Coretta, and then but this time he was already being recognized as the national leader of the civil rights movement. So he was leading boycotts, he was staging protests against segregation in the South, primarily in the South. There is a phrase from him that says, and you know, my friends, there comes a time when people get tired of being trampled over the iron feet of oppression, meaning that people get tired of being just discriminated, segregated, humiliated, humiliated, and it just there is a moment that is enough. So these words help begin the leadership role for the cause of African American equality. Now, one of the ideas that he followed was Mahatma Gandhi, and those ideas were about nonviolence. So, if you are going to protest against something, nonviolence is always encouraged instead of responding with any other kind of a strategy. So, but this time he was giving speeches, and he was giving like around 280 speeches a year. So if the year has 365 days, so he was busy probably more than 208 days a year. So the mission that King had was so his platform was, we can stick together. Our leaders do not have to sell out. Threats and violence do not intimidate us. We believe in ourselves. Economics is part of our struggle or our problem. We have a powerful weapon, which is a nonviolent resistance. Now, we as Negroes have arrived. Now, this is very important because Negroes was used um, a terrible word. So it was kind of an insult. They would use this as an insult. He kind of switched the meaning of the word and said, okay, we are Negroes, and now we're going to have a presence. Now, since there were so many things that people didn't like, people in the power didn't like, um, he received many threats. So when he was promoting his book Stride Towards Freedom, he was stabbed by an irrational African American woman. Luckily, he survived. He recuperated from at the hospital in the hospital after the incident. So that was not only the only. In 1960, King was again arrested, and then he received a phone call um, from not from George Kennedy, but actually he called Coretta, the wife, to encourage him and to support him to pursue and continue with his fight. Um, there is an important moment in history where there was a gathering of 250,000 people in Washington, D.C. that happened on August 28, 1963. Um, in this place, he actually gave one speech that it is called I Have a Dream, which is one of the most famous speeches that you're going to find and one of the most representatives. Um, Same thing, there were many people that didn't like what he was doing, so he would receive many intimidation, death threats, threats against the family, and this is just one of them. So there was a shot, somebody fired through the window when he was in a cottage or a cottage in Florida. So nobody was home, nobody was hurt, and that was the end of it. But he received many, many threats like this. Now, on December 10, 1965, Dr. King won the Nobel uh, Peace Prize. And actually, in one of the speeches, one of the president of the college was saying that he was using a citation from him and said, okay, the moment when I'm gone, the moment that I'm not here anymore, do not mention that I have a Nobel Peace Prize. That is not important. Please mention all the ideals and everything that we have been fighting for. Now, the principal ideas, the fundamental ideas that he had, it is fundamental Christianity, church, religious ideas drawn from tradition, and then the American founding ideas. So he was not only combining the ideas that he had from Christianity, but also he was mixing them with all the values, the original values of the United States of America. Now he was against Vietnam War. So he switched. There was some where he switched from racial um, discrimination to problems of poverty and economic injustice. So in the sense that to people who will receive the same job, they would not receive the same payment, even though they were doing exactly the same. But just if one person was white and the other one was black, the payment was completely different. Now, on April 4th, 1968, while standing on a balcony in this hotel, Lorraine Motel, he was assassinated by James Earl Ray. So we have the showings of the funeral. It was a great loss. The country, Coretta, the young daughter, Bernice, mourned his death. And later on, he was entombed at the Freedom Hall complex. Now, this site was actually listed in a National Historic Landmark on May 5th, 1977. And then later on, he was made onto a National Historic Site on October 10, 1980. And Dr. Martin Luther King continues to make an impact in the life of today's people, and his story lives on. So we are still receiving part of the benefits that he was fighting for.